Joining us to talk more about this is Patrick Johnstone. He is the mayor of New Westminster. Westminster had the highest per capita death toll as a result of the 2021 heat dome. And I just want to start by asking you, how are you feeling on this grim anniversary today?
I still get emotional thinking about it. It was a really difficult day for our city. People died in New Westminster, many of them in my neighborhood in the brow of the hill. I still hear from people who lost family members and friends through the heat dome. I are to first responders who were traumatized by having to address this sort of widespread health emergency that they maybe weren't prepared or expected for, and there was the challenges that they faced through that. So I think it's still in the middle of still in our hearts and still 5 years later.
It was interesting speaking to Dr. Lem earlier in the hour. She brought up New Westminster as the city that has done the most in terms of protecting tenants specifically. Can you walk us through what changes in law you've made as a result of the heat dome?
Well, I'd say when the event happened, it was pretty clear we had to do something. The mayor at the time, Jonathan Cote, and the council at the time committed that we were not just going to talk about this. We were actually going to take action, do everything we could to assure that the next time we had a heat dome, and there will be a next time, that we'd be more prepared and we would not see the kind of tragedy that we saw that week. We have done a variety of things in the city, and it started with identifying where the risk is. It started with actually spending the time to go to find out where the most vulnerable people and the most vulnerable buildings are in the city, so that first responders were aware of, had a map of where the real challenges were in the community, so they could respond quicker and more effectively. We've done a variety of things, from supporting retrofits programs and supporting heat cooling programs beyond what the province has done. We have our own electrical utility in New Westminster allowed us to do expand on air conditioning and fans and services like that for folks who are vulnerable. Outside cooling spaces, expanding the hours of our indoor cooling spaces. We're thinking about the long term, building an urban forest back and planting trees in order to be more protect. But the biggest thing we've done recently is on our changing our bylaws, and we have created bylaws in the city. First, we made it illegal for landlords to ban air conditioners. We basically said you cannot ban an air conditioner unless so for folks who did seek relief had the ability to do that. And now we've actually taken a page out of the building code. In the building code in British Columbia, for as long as anyone has remembered, it is the responsibility of the landlord to make sure a home can maintain a minimum temperature. We have heat. And that is to make sure people don't freeze to death in their homes. People don't freeze to death in their homes anymore. But we are mandating now a maximum temperature based on data from the public health officer, and saying that they also have to take on that responsibility that apartments have enough ventilation or active cooling or other measures in order to make sure that people are safe in their homes and don't die of heat exhaustion in their homes.
And that minimum or that maximum is 26 degrees Celsius, right?
Yeah, it's 26 degrees, and that was, again, based on data from the public health officer and based on, the province themselves have brought in building code changes to require that as a guideline for new buildings. But of course, in New Westminster, the most vulnerable people are people in the existing buildings and the older building stock that aren't necessarily built to that code.
Okay, we have a caller on the line who has some experience negotiating and changing bylaws. I want to bring in Nathan, who is calling from Vancouver. Hi, Nathan.
Hi, I was a member of the advisory committee for the City of Vancouver, one of the many advisory committees for City of Vancouver, working on the maximum temperature bylaw until the current mayor axed or discontinued all the advisory committees. We were working on the max temperature, but the problem is, unlike New West, which is governed by the community charter, Vancouver is governed under the Vancouver Charter, which existed before British Columbia. So it's a bit of a can of worms. It requires the province to open up the charter, and for whatever relationship reasons or disagreements between the city and the province, the province, which I understand, has been hesitant to open up the Vancouver Charter to make the changes. But until they do that, we can't legally set a maximum. We have the power to set a minimum temperature, but we don't have the legal power to set a maximum temperature in the bylaws.
That must be frustrating. And here's my question. I'll start with you, Nathan, and then maybe you can weigh in, Patrick. But Would landlords actually resist this? Like, is it a difficult thing to do, an expensive thing to do to make changes to have a room that is minimum temperature or maximum temperature 26 degrees Celsius, Nathan?
Yeah, so we found a lot of the issues is like old building strata bylaws, and like were designed at a time when when our climate was a lot cooler. A lot of it was aesthetic reasons, and a lot of it was causing a lot. And then people didn't want to drill holes in the walls. There were a lot of varying reasons. We're also working on this. There are also issues with like who covers the cost of the AC, depending on the situation and setup of the rental agreement. Who's covering the extra charges, the cost of running the air conditioner? Like there were varied reasons, but yeah, landlords did resist letting tenants install air conditioners or heat pumps.
Thank you very much for that insight, Nathan. Really interesting to see what the differences are in Vancouver compared to New West. Mayor Johnstone, did you encounter resistance from landlords to some of the changes that your municipality's made?
Yeah, I can also speak a little bit to Nathan's issues around the charter. Vancouver itself does have a separate community charter, and their building code is embedded in that, and so it does make it difficult in Vancouver to make changes to the building code without provincial permission. However, we didn't use those tools as a city. We actually used our business licensing tool. So we use a different set of, I think all cities are available to all cities. And the idea is if you run a rental building, you need a business license to do that, and we can regulate how that business is operated in a way that makes sure that the customers of that business are kept safe.
Well, that's interesting.
Yes, we've used an innovative tool. It's similar to what we've done to against rent evictions in our city a few years ago. As for, we surprisingly, actually, I would say, have not heard a lot from landlords on this move yet. I think the bylaw is relatively new. We have just begun. It was just passed or adopted by the city like last month, and we are beginning the sort of work of enforcement and how we're going to actually roll it out. We've done a lot of work, I think, during the to talk to landlords and to talk to people involved and building managers. But we surprisingly did not have a lot of pushback yet. It'll be interesting. One part of it is we're not being prescriptive. We're not telling people how they have to achieve this. We're not mandating the installation of air conditioners or any changes like that. We're expecting them to be creative, and we will provide support as a city. Our staff will be providing them support on how to perhaps change the color of the roof of the building so it reflects heat better, perhaps improve ventilation, perhaps just do upgrades to the HVAC system that exists. There are other window shades and things like that can actually help quite a bit. So we're trying not to be prescriptive. We're trying to work with the landlords in order to make sure that they can meet compliance.
Okay, let's go back to our callers now. And we have a call from Langford. Hello, Jan.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. So 5 years ago, I wasn't the only one who almost died. It was pretty much 30 degrees Celsius at BC Housing in Langford. And the only reason I'm in Langford is because this is where the housing was, and we were moved out here about 5.5 years ago. So we had these heat traps, 4-story, 5-story heat traps with 80 or 100 people in them. And BC Housing is not responding, and this is the government. So I really appreciate what the guy was saying there about the mayor, setting bylaws. I think it's critical. Every municipality should be setting bylaws so that the BC government, at least the BC government, will be compelled to do the right thing. Cross ventilation, heat pumps, screens on windows. I put aluminum foil on my windows. That's how I survived. And I was in the bathtub 6 times a day, and that was on the advice of paramedics. The paramedics said, "Don't go to the hospital. Go back to your apartment. Get into the bathtub." Yeah.
It's just, that sounds so scary.
Yeah. Thank you.
That was Jan calling from Langford with, a really harrowing tale. Are so many of those, Mayor Johnstone?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we learned, and the coroner's report made clear about this, is it wasn't necessarily the heat of the day. The heat of the day was really oppressive and difficult for a lot of people. It was the challenge was in a lot of the older apartments, they didn't cool down at night. And so people went to bed at night and were unfortunately exposed to heat that just caused heat exhaustion. And they might not even have known they were in trouble but before they died. They might not have known that they were actually having that challenge. We are in the city also expanded this year. We have 500 cool kits. And those cool kits we're giving out to people who are in vulnerable buildings, vulnerable people. And the goal of those is to make sure people have those tips. Like, yes, a cool will make a huge change. A shower will make a huge change in your ability to cool yourself. and just giving people the tools and the knowledge to know when they are in trouble and know when to seek help if they do need help.
Thanks for that. Let's go back to our phone lines. We have another call, this time from Victoria. Hello, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. What are your memories of the heat dome in 2021, and how are you feeling about what's been done since?
Yeah, I remember being awful, frankly. I remember that our family had to sleep downstairs because it was too hot upstairs for us to sleep comfortably. But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, we didn't have too much trouble compared to a lot of other people. You know, what I wanted to bring up is, you know, the most intelligent people, including the guests you had on the last half hour, are, you know, pretty aware that reliance and continued use of fossil fuels is the major driver in these major weather events. And it's probably obviously just getting worse every year. If I know this and other intelligent people know this, I would assume that our reasonably intelligent elected officials know this. So why are they continuing to ramp up our fossil fuel use? Where's the disconnect there?
And certainly, Chris, we have heard about the expansion of oil and gas in Canada, along with some kind of potential mitigation efforts. What do you make, Mayor Johnston, about how the discussion around oil and gas, LNG in this province has changed in the last 5 years? Do you see a disconnect?
Absolutely. I can't agree more. The first thing we should be doing in any emergency is stop putting gas on the fire. And it doesn't seem like we are doing the things that we need to do to stop putting gas on the fire. I've been at this work for a long time. I'm an environmental scientist as a background. And I think for decades we've been talking about the costs that are coming down the road if we don't take action. And in the moment, it was always an argument that it was going to cost us too much money in the short term to fix the gas on the fire problem that we have. And unfortunately, we now have to suffer those costs. It's going to cost us a lot of more money to mitigate this shift in our climate, this disruption of our climate, than it would have probably cost us to prevent it. But we're not down that path. But I think one message I want to say about that is I don't want people to feel that we've lost the fight and it's over. That's not the way to think about climate change. It's not the way to think about our approach to climate change. Every bit of carbon that we don't put in the atmosphere now will make this situation less worse in the future. It still matters that we fight, that we do that beginning work. It still matters that we stop as quickly as we can getting carbon in the atmosphere and start mitigating it, because heat domes are going to happen. They're going to get worse, but we can reduce how bad they get, and we can save lives and save money on the long road if we take that action today.
Continuing on that theme, we have an email from Paul. He writes, "What depresses me most about this anniversary is that after 5 years, both the federal and provincial governments are still pushing ahead with fossil fuel developments as if there is no connection to extreme weather events." Paul writing that they have learned nothing. We also have some comments on the flip side of that from TikTok. Jay-Z writes, "Yo," I love the TikTok language. Thank you for that. "Yo, those are just normal temperatures in some places." And a question from another TikTok commenter commenting on Europe, saying it's sad that Europe is going through it right now, asking how many have passed there. And I think the latest figure I saw out of Europe was 1,300 deaths, and of course that's across multiple countries. And again, lots of jurisdictions there, Mayor Johnstone, where people do not have air conditioning, and these are temperatures that people are not accustomed to. So is there any learnings that can be shared municipality to municipality with other places in the world that are experiencing these extreme heat events?
Yeah, I mean, the parallels between what's happening in France today and what happened here 5 years ago are obvious. It's the same sort of weather phenomenon. It's the same heat dome. It is, I think the numbers I saw in Europe is it's a 1 in 7,000 year event, an anomalous event, such that it's unprecedented. And Yeah, there are other parts of the world where they are built around hotter temperatures. I don't think that 41 degrees and wet bulb temperatures in the 30s are a livable thing in societies where they haven't been built to live in that space. And we are going to have to think about how we build our new buildings. That's why the province has changed the building code. We are going to have to think about adapting to a hotter future. But that doesn't mean we can't adapt the entire country right now to a hotter future. We did not build this entire city for 40-degree heat in the summer. We didn't do that. And it's going to cost us a lot of money and a lot of time to do that. And people are going to die because we can't do it fast enough. So it's not normal. And to say that and to dismiss it as this is something that is normal in other places, I think takes away from the risk that people are facing here in the community and takes away a little bit from the energy to actually do the work to save lives.
It's interesting because we are getting a little bit of a pushback on the climate change discussion. I want to read you an email from Terry. He says, yes, the heat dome was caused by climate change and climate change must be addressed. But let's get real. There were plenty of 40-degree Celsius days in the Okanagan when I was a kid in the 60s, when air conditioning in residence was almost unknown and people managed. With the exception of we all have access to a cool bath or shower, and there are other ways of keeping cool. Are we going to blame all the heart attacks in the next month on the stress created by problems like this? And then he says, just cool it. So should people be taking more personal responsibility here, do you think?
Sure. I mean, but people also need to understand what the challenge is. As I said, people who died during the heat dome, many of them didn't know they were in trouble. They thought they were fine. They didn't know that falling asleep in an apartment when it's 38 degrees in that apartment can mean you don't wake up in the morning. I think that, and I think, again, I don't want to distract from the actual causes of what's happening. This is not normal. This is climate disruption. This is extremely unusual weather event for our part of the world. I just fear that we accept mass death as a normal part of our life now. I don't accept that. It is not a normal event that took place. We had 1,000 people. It is the largest weather-related disaster in Canadian history. Okay, it's not a normal thing that took place. It wasn't just another 40-degree Saturday. It was the largest weather disaster in Canadian history. And let's take action on that.
Do you think enough attention has been paid to that? Like, I remember covering the event, and right after there was the fire in Lytton. So everyone obviously was paying attention to that. We were in the middle or coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nothing was normal then. Do you think that this event has been treated with the gravity that we would of a similar scale disaster if it were, say, a tornado or an event like that?
Yeah, or 10 jumbo jets.
Yeah.
I think that 2021 was a difficult year. We had an entire summer of azure skies and of heat event. We lost lit. We had this event, and we were still living through COVID. We weren't coming out of COVID. We were still living through COVID and still living through COVID restrictions. It was a traumatic time for our community and for all of our communities. And I think that, yes, I fear a little bit that we experienced what we did. We experienced mass death in a way that I don't think Canadians are used to. And I think that it was just one part of that story of that summer. And again, I'm glad that we're looking back at it. I'm glad that we're thinking about it 5 years on. I'm glad that the coroner put out that report and that municipalities and the province and other people are taking action based on that 5-year report, because I don't want that kind of mass death to be something that we just accept as normal in Canada. I want us to take action to keep people safe, to keep vulnerable people safe, to keep people in my community safe.
I'm Lindsay Duncombe. You're listening to BC Today. We have just a few minutes left. If you want to give us a call on today's topic, we're marking the 5-year anniversary of the deadly heat dome, where 619 British Columbians died. The number is 1-800-825-5950 or 604-669-3733. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. You can also leave a comment on our TikTok. Let's go back to the phones now and check in with Fred. Fred is calling from Vancouver. How are you feeling on this anniversary, Fred?
Feeling both hopeful and concerned at this current time, actually. Both in looking back at kind of the destruction that did happen with regard to the effects for all of here, but looking to the future, I know that there is currently a proposal for an expansion of an LNG project in Delta that I'm very concerned about. It's set to have nearly the same amount of pollution per year as the whole of the city of Vancouver, and so to bring that into the Lower Mainland and British Columbia and the world in general definitely feels concerning, especially in the context of something like this.
Yeah, that has come up repeatedly in our conversation today. That link between the ongoing push to expand LNG projects throughout the province, not to mention the fact that we are talking about the expansion of the oil industry and even a potential oil pipeline. What makes you hopeful? You mentioned that there was concern. What's the hopeful part?
I think the hopeful part is actually listening to a lot of the people that were calling in today, and even just talking about the various aspects that not only contribute but also what we can do. I think the fact that those are an active part of the conversation and it's not just despair is incredibly important in trying to figure out what the future holds. I mean, I work in communications. That's really the whole thing of it, is trying to be able to say there is an opportunity to change this thing that we go through that devastates the communities. I think with regard to LNG projects, the thing that makes me hopeful is that, for Tilbury LNG exposed, like the expansion down in Delta right now, there's an opportunity for people to go and speak out and add their voice. And so it brings me hope that I've already seen hundreds of people start to kind of flood the comments of that and really kind of talk and explain some of the concerns that we have. And so I think it's action that gives me hope. And I hope people take it more.
Thank you very much for calling. And that's a really interesting point to end on, Patrick. Before we go, we've got just about a minute left. If people are thinking about this anniversary and they are feeling a little bit sad or despondent, what do you recommend people do?
I always find hope in the youth in our community, because they recognize this. I talk to anyone under the age of 30 and they understand this issue, and they have concern about their own futures because they don't know what the future of the climate is going to feel like and how that's going to impact their lives when they're my age. But I have so much hope because they want to do something. They want to take action. They want to see action being done. And we had a youth action team in the city that did a really creative project around climate action in the city over the last year. So that's where I do see hope, but I also see hope in organizations like CAPE who are speaking out and making sure that that people don't forget that we talk about oil and gas. We talk about that often in the context of economy. We don't talk about it in the context of humanity and what kind of world we're leaving our kids and what.
We have to leave it there. That is Patrick Johnstone. He is the new Westminster Mayor.